and Champaign-Urbana. There'll be 2 different weekends. WIU and SIU are the same weekend. They're the last weekend in January, and the U of I one is the first weekend in February. So by a show of hands, how many of you can actually do, we'll do the overnight, can do an overnight, prefer to have an overnight event for Ground Zero for your students. Ground Zero replaces 212, if you remember. Nice and high. Okay, let's count and write this down. When you're saying you prefer, you're saying that you can to me. Because the last thing I want to do is offer it tonight and you say, oh, I can't. Well, then you shouldn't have said that's what you prefer. Okay. Oh, thanks. Okay, well, maybe we should go the opposite since there's so many hands. How many of you cannot or prefer an overnight event? I have 1 in this row. I have 2 in that row. 2, 3, 4. Any others? Okay. Looks like I have 7 of how many are in the room? We know 60 some. Okay, so obviously, so then we will shoot for an overnight event. We need to work with our host sites. Okay. And so we have to work with our host sites on getting that an overnight event, but that's what we will work towards for you. So with those 3 locations, we'll look for information to come out about being an overnight event. And again, it'll be freshman, sophomore level students that will be involved in that. Yes, Corky. Talked about earlier was that what we would do is make the schedule be relatively accommodating that you could commute back and forth if you had to. You know what I'm trying to say? So in the evening, you would have some flexibility. Maybe that host college would be doing something that was considered maybe optional so that then that school could travel back and forth that night and then the next one. If we do that, and we could offer another virtual option. We offered a virtual option for this one, and we didn't have maybe a handful, not a handful of schools, a handful of students sign up. And so we just did not think it was worth our time to have those facilitators do that. Any other thoughts or questions about Ground Zero? Yes.
If kids participated virtually last year, will it be the same experience or should we bring them again?
It will be a different experience. Okay. There will be probably some components that blend over. So as I said, Kylie is our student, one of our student workers. She'll be our summer intern as well. Kylie is working on that curriculum development, and I think what we've encouraged her to do, we haven't seen all that she's developed yet, or she's again in the just beginning that process. We've encouraged her to kind of merge what we developed with Ground Zero because there were some components we really liked about it. Of course, it was all virtual with some of the components from 212 because there were things about 212 that we liked too, but not necessarily the entire curriculum of either one. So there may be some things that they experienced before virtually, but I would think that being in person, I would go ahead and bring them. Yeah, we're not going to compare names from one year to the next. No. Any other questions about that? Getting into proficiencies, state degrees, American degrees, I hope, or let me ask you this question. How many of you know what the deadline is for the American FFA degree app in Illinois this year? Kinzinger. Is that earlier or later than years past?
Earlier.
Yeah, it's about 6 weeks earlier, as you know, as I put out in the listserv already. So somebody's reading them. That's validation right there.
Which one was that?
As we put out earlier, national phase deadline is moving up, and that whole time frame has had to shift. And I have a document out on the website. If you look underneath American degree, it'll tell you the Illinois procedures. I do have to change the dates the week of the interviews.
No, you're fine.
But I don't think that's
yeah, Maddie. It's one of the piles over there.
You just virtual interview if they need a virtual interview.
Did you order from me?
We are going to do interviews in person. We're going to have people back.
Okay, then it'll be just one of those on the floor.
Always one of the highlights of the year for me, to be honest.
Nope, whichever one you want.
In our building and just
there
kind of
you
making
go.
that capstone.
Thank you so very much.
And with us. So you are correct. The American FFA degree application deadline is January 15th, and it's all online. All they have to do is submit everything online. There's no supplemental or additional stuff that has to be sent. The application needs to be saved and submitted. January 15th. Questions about American degree? We'll follow the same process we have before. We'll have our retired group of teachers review those applications, catch any potential red flags. I will send emails to them saying, your community service doesn't match or whatever other problems is. Most common problem is community service. So please have them read up on that, or you yourself refresh yourself on the.
See if you can open it.
What is acknowledged or recognized by national FFA and what is not. And then we'll send them those emails, ask them to get their corrections done as soon as possible. And then we'll conduct the interviews. As I said, usually we do interviews over the course of 3 days, and we'll do both in-person and virtual interviews, just as we've done in the past. Any questions about American degrees? State degrees and proficiencies will proceed just as they did last year, as far as everything is submitted online, and the scoring system at district and national, or district and state, will be via AET, just like we did last year at the section level. You have that local control. You can do it either way you like. We will have Excel rubrics that the SAE committee has made a few tweaks to, and you can use those for your section committee for proficiencies. And as I said, state degrees are just like last year. Are there any questions about state degrees or proficiencies at this time? State Awards Day will be that last Saturday in March, and this year it's going to be at Eisenhower High School in Decatur. So I have heard your plea. We've had some friends that have said, we've heard your plea. We've all heard your pleas, that you want to be under one roof. You want to be in one building, one location, and not have parking snags. This is our attempt at trying to solve that a little bit. Eisenhower is going to all be under one roof, and parking is not going to be a problem. And the students at Eisenhower High School and the teachers, because between Eisenhower and MacArthur, they have 4 ag teachers, and they feel like they can adequately host us for State Awards Day. We are working out food yet, but I would prepare your students or your chapter to have your students have money, because they may have to buy their lunch at the concessions or something like that. We're working on getting judges money or judges food covered. And I think we can do that with your district due and that type of thing. So, and with our sponsorships, but I don't know that we can cover every student, but we definitely will cover judges. So State Awards Day, the time frame will be very much as it's been in the past. It will be like that 10 o'clock start, and then you'll do you will get the apps in advance. So you'll get to judge the apps in advance, and you'll really be doing the interviews that day, which hopefully will help you make that day go faster for everyone. But we will also, our goal is to also have our videographer on site again. So for your district star winners and your state proficiency winners, they will be videoed, just like as we've done, when I say in the past, a couple years ago. So if you have a state winner, you have to be prepared to stay for the video. District stars will try to get those knocked out as their morning interviews go along as well. What questions can I answer about State Awards Day or proficiencies? Yes, ma'am.
Will they be 100% in person?
Yes, yes, we will make that exceptional rule where a kid has to Zoom in because maybe they're on their family had a pre-planned vacation, or they're on a mission trip. Reverting back to our rules a couple years ago, and we maybe have 6 or 7 kids that couldn't make the interview because they had some type of conflict like that, and we honor that conflict. But I will say we don't honor conflicts necessarily like I have sports engagement, I'm in club volleyball or something like that. We really got to start to draw the line that kids need to make some choices. But when it's circumstances that are beyond their control, we've had some kids that have been competing in the state science fair competition on that same day. And we've worked with them to schedule their interviews at a little bit different time. But our goal is to be 100% in person. One of the things that we discussed with the FFA board is, if we're going, you are all leaning in the survey to being back in person. You said we want to be back in person for that. So we want to honor that. But if we start having nearly half of you say, well, my kid wants to be virtual, trying to manage both of those on the same day is a little bit, it's too much, to be honest. It's somebody's going to fall through the cracks, and then you're going to have more issues and problems. So our goal is to be 100% in person, with that exception of the kid that has that conflict that can't be avoided. Good question. There was another question. Are there other questions?
Some of the date again.
The last Saturday in March.
26.
Yeah, March 26th. Other questions? For district proficiencies, and I'm going to tell the section chairs this and the FFA board this, but for district proficiencies, which is March 9th, I believe. I want to look that confirm that, but I will not be at the FFA Center. I'll be in New Orleans at the Commodity Classic, but I still will be answering my cell phone to answer your proficiency questions. So we're still on duty that week, but I will not be in Illinois at that time.
That's the day.
What'd you say?
That's the right day. That's the right
That
day.
March 9th. That's March 9th. So that's a little bit about state degrees and proficiencies and American degrees. Any other questions in that regard, in that vein? As many of you know, the IVAT board is working on a lot of things. The two big things that they have is that IVAT is celebrating their 100th anniversary this summer. So that's a big celebration for this organization, and we're very excited. The IVAT board has a subcommittee. If one of the board members wants to talk about it, we can. But they have a subcommittee kind of focusing on ways in which we can celebrate the 100th. And then there also is IVAT that's working on the Region 4 conference that will be in Effingham this summer. And that'll be the week after IVAT. So speaking of those weeks, our FFA Center staff just sat down and did a calendar for the next 2022-2023 year, which isn't something we've been able to do for quite some time. So we're very excited about how things are adding up. We will be offering FFA camp next summer, but we are, and I'm not going to give you the dates for it yet because we are still trying to balance out a few things, but most likely will be that corresponding last week in July like it has been. If it is that week, it will be Monday through Thursday instead of Tuesday through Friday. And that's because the camp has other obligations as well. So as we're piecing together the calendar, make sure you do have the dates for state convention. It does start June 14th. State convention always starts the second Tuesday in June. This is the latest state convention can be. So as you can imagine, that's made scheduling for the summer very interesting and challenging because with that last week there, and other events changing throughout the summer because COVID has happened. Other organizations are changing their events and the dates of them. So the calendar for the state officers is going to be a little bit challenging, but one we're really looking forward to because we're able to put things back in place that have not been. At this time, we are told that National FFA is doing WLC, and Illinois has said we want an Illinois week. But that's all the information I have to share. I have nothing else from National as far as a price or what weeks they'll offer it or any of their details about that. But as soon as we know that, we will be sharing that with you and coordinating that piece for an Illinois week. What questions can I answer for you about the calendar or things coming up over the summer? Yes.
You've got agronomy coming up in December.
December 11th.
Is there a talk on what you're doing with dairy foods?
Dairy foods will be at Parkland College. It was in the listserv that I shared last week.
Oh, it wasn't. I missed it.
Yes, yep, it's in there.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Dairy foods will be at Parkland College.
Do on Saturday, early bird, right?
Yes.
I just posted, Michelle. I'm just as bad as you. I don't
I
even.
saw the agronomy one. I didn't see the dairy. Very good.
Good. Other calendar questions? Kinzinger.
State convention, hoping to go back to.
Yes.
standard format.
Yes, we will be at the Bank of Springfield Center. All things going according to plan. We'll be at the Bank of Springfield Center. As I shared with you earlier, we are under contract with the Bank of Springfield Center until 2027. And it is our goal. We had a state convention brainstorming meeting last Wednesday. And in that brainstorming meeting, we talked about, because so many of you liked the whole concept of maybe having district sessions, but there's also the other side of that for a lot of people doesn't feel like state convention, and where do we put in our retiring addresses and how do we hit the state events? And so with the brainstorming meeting, I think we circled for about an hour, landed nowhere, and honestly kind of wanted to look and see, can we go back to the schedule that we had proposed to you in 2020, see if you like that schedule, which if you remember, the 2020 schedule was going to go a little bit later on Tuesday evening, no dance. State degrees were all going to be Wednesday afternoon, finish about 5. And then that evening, you could have dinner with your families that come for their kids for their state degrees. There are going to be a lot of activities going on out at Lincoln Land Community College. We were going to have our Sky Zone and Nice Action Park offering FFA opportunities that evening. So that evening was somewhat of a free evening or an evening where you could do fun activities or be with the families that come for the state degree ceremony. And then we would wrap up Wednesday or Thursday with elections in the morning, and then CDEs and national chapter and most of the traditional stuff that we would have on Thursday. That was the 2020 proposed schedule. And as I said, we talked a lot about continuing with that, and then in a couple of years visiting the idea or the concept of district sessions. A lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot of people, a lot of teachers that I interacted with, and then those who were on our call the other day, liked what they saw at national convention, where you saw a little bit of everything in a session, which a district session would do that for you. However, it's just that district. And so again, one of the biggest concerns was what keeps that school there for elections on Thursday, what keeps them there for retiring addresses, or what are ways in which we can make it still a state convention and not split up into making it district conventions if we did district sessions. So I'm anxious to hear if you have an opinion one way or another, which I know you all do, but any thoughts or reactions to that, or you want to give me a straw poll if you're willing to let us do the 2020 proposed agenda. Let's see how that goes, and then we can come back and visit district sessions in a couple of years if we're still interested in that, or no, we really think you should do district sessions now and see if we can get that off the ground. So 2020 agenda, show of hands, go for it.
I'll let you vote.
5, 6, 7, 8.
This is 5 sessions, not 6.
Yes, sir. And want to lean into the district session concept and see how that works. Okay, all right. So we'll stick with that. I'm glad we asked you guys that, because again, we circled a lot in that meeting that we had last week. So what other calendar type questions can I answer for you? Are we ready? I think so. Okay. The others on the other end can hear, and is Marissa going to talk or are we talking? Okay, we're working on trying to get, so Marissa Modlin is the Special Projects Committee Chair, and we're working on a way to get her to share her screen. And if you have your phone and you can get to my listserv, you can see the plans that they shared with you. A couple of things I would like to encourage you to do is not only read the information or review it when she posts it, but also there is a survey at the bottom of that listserv that I sent, and it's ask you to fill out that survey and give the Special Projects and IVAT board, give them some feedback. Are there any other concerns, issues, topics you'd like to address as we're, oh, hey, that's me.
That is you.
Well, that's not a pretty picture. Thanks for that, friends. Are there other topics? Other topics we can answer for anybody before we get into resection? Any issues, any concerns? Happy to tackle them with you. Not trying to postpone talking about resectioning at all. Okay, we are ready for that? Okay.
All right, Marissa, if you're ready, if you want to start talking, we'll get the spotlight switched over to you and you can share your screen, I believe.
Okay, sounds good. Hello to everybody. And let me do this. So before I pull them up, I just want to say thank you to the Special Projects Committee. We've worked long and hard on all the options from last year. And we have developed 2 new options for this year. So thank you to the Special Projects Committee. Also, thank you to the task force for coming up with a newer idea, the 30-section map that we have kind of looked at, and we have created a 30-section map. So that kind of helped get us a jump start to a totally different idea. And then also thank you to the board and FK for their efforts as well. Many of FK have been on with several calls with us to look at junior colleges and drive times and various other details that tend to get overlooked. So thank you to them. And then of course the board for letting us present these to them. So the first option map we have is, we're calling this the 25 section balanced map. So it does look very similar to the map that's currently in place. However, we went back and tried to reach policy. Well, we didn't try, we reached policy within every section. So here there are some minor district changes as well, just for, especially we all know that D5 had to lose some schools up north. But overall, we tried to make this map with as little moves as possible. So as you can see, if we just go through the different districts, we're seeing numbers between that 13 and 17 range for each section. And so that's where we kind of started. And it says now you can all see my screen, hopefully. So hopefully that's the case. And these links were shared out by Mindy. Thank you for doing that as well. So it's probably easier as you're looking at specific sections and specific schools to do that. But this is what the 25 balanced map looks like. Again, we tried to meet policy without moving very many schools at all. The second option we have is what we're calling the 30 section map. And so this stemmed from the resolution that was presented at conference over the summer. We actually chose to start with the 25 section map that was balanced to create this 30 section map. And we chose to do it that way because we knew that we were already going to be within policy. And so thinking forward about trying to prevent resectioning from happening and to still allow for that growth, we wanted to start with a balanced map already. Oh, Casey says we're seeing the Google Classroom. Sorry, let me try this again then. Is that the 30 section map?
Yes. Yeah, you're good.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. So 30 section map, like I said, we started with the 25 balanced. I moved in here. And then we did draw our regional lines in here as well. So I'm obviously a D5 rep. So D5 here, we've got our region kind of split this way. So 3 sections in each region. And then all the other districts are set up that same way. Again, all of the sections here also meet policy, but we did find that we were able to create equal numbers, not just balancing. So we see more of like 13, 12s, and 14s in the different sections. And so again, this is just adding another section per district. And then we divided into 2 regions per district as well. And I can let Mindy and John answer more specific questions about that, I'm sure, in a minute. But the region is just to create that new layer of FFA officers to alleviate some of the costs from the state office. So the regional officers would kind of be almost in between the section officers and state, but the section officers would still be doing many of the things that they do currently. As far as CDEs and SAEs go, the regional aspect would only be used as an invitational. So to our knowledge, no qualifying events would come from a regional event or anything like that. Are there any questions or comments so far?
I think we're good, Marissa.
Okay, so then this was shared with everybody as well, but we did look at some data points and we are kind of still looking at the question of what's the end goal? Where does this resectioning take us, especially for years down the road? I think we all can agree that we want to do this as few times as possible, but we also want to make sure we're still meeting the wants and needs of our membership. So looking at The different maps, we collected some different data points here. So this is our current map data sheet, and that's labeled down there at the bottom for you all to see as well. We looked at longest drive time because that became very apparent that it was a big concern for many teachers and chapters. So we looked at the drive time, how many chapters are in each section, and then changes in FK and changes in junior colleges if there were any. So obviously with the current map, you're not going to see any changes there. There are 3 sections that are not within policy with the current map, and that's where we have to figure out what to do about those, because policy does state that we have to be within 13 and 17 schools per section. You're good. Did you sign out? Yeah. Nope, you're good. Thanks, Aiden. Sorry about that. Then as you look at the 25 section map, one thing that we noticed across all 3 maps is the drive times didn't necessarily change a whole lot. I think that we assumed that we would create these more balanced maps, and with smaller sections also have shorter drive times, but that seemed to not really be the case. In some instances, it did bring the time down a little bit, but overall, not that much. And again, on this data point, we're looking at the different changes for FK and junior colleges. And the committee is still kind of working on those final details. We just, with national convention and everything, I think we all kind of ran out of time for doing those types of things. But 30 section map, again, the drive times, some of them did decrease. But again, it wasn't anything significant in our eyes, 10, 15 minutes or so. And some of them actually did increase. And again, we can still look at, you know, maybe we could move a couple schools back and forth, especially those that are on the lines. Any questions, comments as of now? So those are the 2 options that we have presented to the board. The board did like both of them. And so moving forward, we just need some feedback specifically on how we can improve the maps. And that's where that survey comes into play that Mindy sent out. Again, these are just 2 of the options if we go down the road of resectioning at this point. So when you are filling out that survey, first off, please fill it out. We do need as much membership as possible to complete it, but also please focus on the maps themselves, not just resectioning as a whole topic, because that is still being debated with the board. So moving forward, we would greatly appreciate if any comments, concerns can be sent to any of the special projects district reps, your IVAT board reps as well. And then again, filling out that survey is going to really help us finalize things before we get a final map.
We do have one question in the audience so far.
Okay.
Yeah, so my question is, has there been any concern or consideration for some of the schools that are in sections that like have not been active for years or ever? For example, in the section or the 30 section map, what used to be section 15 is kind of split now in half. And like Highland is going to go south, where there's only going to be like 4 schools that have ever participated. So they're going to have like a, unfortunate situation for their students.
Yeah, and that has been
Like the middle schools in Edwardsville are listed, they don't do anything. Then we have all those Metro East schools that theoretically have ag programs but have never done anything.
right. I mean, and we've talked about that quite a bit. The tricky part is putting what's actually happening and then what's on paper, like
Right.
section.
So I know that has been made that like we can revisit that in 5 years. So why don't we like revisit it if they get a better teacher who does something? Why don't we revisit that in 5 years and then change section based on that?
I mean, I think that could be an
I know there's
option.
other sections that are in the same boat, but I know that like the Metro East schools are hit hard with it, and probably some other metro area sections as well are the ones that are gonna be hit with chapters that don't do anything. So we take a, a pretty competitive section and then split it up to where, I mean, like, if Staunton will be going north to still more competition, which is great. But like these schools that are left, they're gonna, I mean, it's just gonna kind of not be great for their kids.
Right, and that's where, when you fill out the survey, if you can list those specific schools that, maybe we need to divide the section this way to make sure that more participation is happening. It's very hard in general just to say what school is participating and which ones are not. We have talked about it quite a bit, and because in some sections, like section 22, we have 20 schools, but
My headphones on here quick.
Well, don't we have like history about like what schools have, like we can look at instant funding grants, we can look at past participation, schools that have paid their fair share or now our share, all of that, and go from that, because all that data does exist.
yeah, I think all of that could be taken into consideration again. The maps were developed using the district reps, and so it is hard to know like every single section very well, especially when a district rep is from one specific section. So again, like filling out that survey and sending those concerns in and some of those data points that you would like to see taken a look at, I don't see that there's any problem with us re-looking at some things and possibly moving some schools around. But again, it is kind of hard to go fully that route just because you never know when a teacher is going to leave or when a new teacher is going to come in. But it is an important thing to look at. And so for any section out there, if you really have some strong data points and things like that, send them our way and we will definitely look at it.
Thank you.
What other questions do you have? Just need time to process? Yes.
It's my understanding this summer that the 30 sections, you would be smaller size. Where I'm at, the 30 section got bigger and drive time
Right.
increased by a half hour.
Yeah, we mentioned that some of those sections that have.
And the $4 gas and things of that nature now might not be the best time to do it. Very disgruntling to know that, we're spread out. We are the smallest section of the state, but we've got good active teachers and we've got enough hands on the wheel. This thing goes well. Can't just have a national winner in creed speaking from our little tiny section. But
So if you prefer the 25 section maps, then go that way. I mean, in the feedback survey, Marissa, they are telling you which one they like better, right?
We did not put that on there, but I mean, it's an easy thing that I can add. We just really were looking for specific feedback for each map, kind of looking at it objectively.
And that specific issue was brought up when we had the meeting between the IDAT board and the special projects committee. Once we put the numbers in, we identified the sections where drive times were still high, that those are sections we can still look at. And your specific area was one where we looked at another potential option to change. But that's being considered and taken into consideration now that the first draft is out there. So that's feedback we need on that survey to make updates and go from here.
Yeah, thanks, John. That, if you're talking about like up in D1, that was brought up to the District 1 rep, and unfortunately he just had some family stuff going on this weekend. So we just haven't had time to really go through that with him and relook at that. But we are looking at that area specifically. And again, this is our starting point. We wanted to, the committee really pushed to share this out with ag teachers so that we can get more feedback from you before we do have the final maps. So filling out that survey is going to be really, really crucial to making these different changes actually happen.
In a meeting.
When you ask,
Teachers from across the state.
when you ask your question, it'd be great if you could say your name and your school so that those that are on Zoom know who's talking.
That was
Well, it
Scott
knows
Dryden at United.
Yeah, that was Scott Ryden at United, who did not like the 30 plan. Just
Hey, we've got a question over here. Nicole Phillips, Theo Allen from Delavan.
Okay.
Just ask it. Okay. So a lot of the difficulty with resectioning is just kind of, figuring out which contests you're able to go to and whatnot. And where your priorities, how your priorities are going to shift in that. It's my understanding that X values financially don't count if you aren't competing in your home section, even if you go to an IAVAT sponsored event. What policy would need to be changed in order to allow that? I think it would take off a lot of the stress of this resectioning thing if we were able to get X value at IAVAT sponsored competitions outside of our home section.
Yeah, that's something we can take into consideration and should be a fairly easy change.
Yeah, I think it would make resectioning.
is of IFGA that are self-reported anyway.
Right.
I think that's gonna be something that can be easily addressed.
I just didn't know if there was a specific policy that was telling us we couldn't already and how we would go about addressing that, but like, I would have zero problem with whatever the resection of Illinois looked like if I knew that I could go to whatever section was closest, most convenient, put on the biggest contest. I'll tell you right now, Mitch Miller puts on a heck of an agronomy contest, and whatever section he ends up on, that's where we're going for our agronomy contest. So, for example.
We've got two questions here. TJ, do you still have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted, TJ Bowen, South Central District 4, Section 19.
Raise it up.
Thank you. Anyway, I just wanted to clarify that we're looking at data points from our current map, our two proposed maps, average travel time across districts is like 10 minutes and 10 miles. And we're trying to solve all the problems by creating a map. I just wanted to confirm that's what we're doing. Just sitting here listening. And then I thought at state convention, we talked about the 30 section map and foundation dollars and section presidents, all of that. Well, we had a meeting this morning. We talked about things that we could do to fix foundation. I'm just wondering which way we're going to go. That's all I'm sitting here thinking and asking. And if anybody's got any answers, please help. I don't have any answers. That's why I'm asking.
The final say, as far as we know, will be up to the IAVT board. So our timeline right now, we wanted to present this out to the ag teachers so that everybody can have a chance to give feedback. And then we're going to meet with the IAVT board again before we get final map options. And TJ, you bring up a good point. Once the committee agreed that once we looked at the travel time data points, it kind of was like, well, we can't really use that as a pro or a con because there's not enough to validate either one. You're right. It's typically 10, maybe 15 minutes that we're either saving or increasing by. And so I think moving forward, it's important now to look at the policy that's making us do this. And if we're trying to make policy be met, or if we're going to use policy to create a different structure that could potentially have more opportunities for our students.
The only other point I have to piggyback that is, I think I lost the train of thought. Anyway, go ahead.
So this is Minnie Baltimore from the FFA Center. All I was going to say was that the task force that threw together the idea of having a 30 section map was we did not draw a map because we didn't want to. That wasn't our job. Our job was to come up with some potential resolutions for the Special Projects Committee and IVAT. And so in that, it was our hope that if we did 30 sections, it could make sections smaller and reduce drive time and meet that goal. But we knew if we did that, Foundation could not financially support an additional 5 section presidents on a state officer team. And that's why we came up with the brainstorm idea of the regional presidents being on the state officer team and having a little bit of division of responsibilities between a regional president and a section president. So that was not, I know that foundation is a factor, but it became a factor when we were coming up with the first resolution to try to solve drive time and solve that challenge before us. Not that it shouldn't be considered, because it should be considered, but I want to re-emphasize that if you look at the comparison of what a 30 section and 25 section, we really worked hard to try to make section president experience still very much what it has been in the past, with the exception of a few things. And that was regional presidents were automatically be on the FFA board. Regional presidents were going to go to national convention with the team and on the state officer team, and regional presidents were going to Quorum Conference. Regional presidents and section presidents would be doing camp and different state officer meetings and state fair and state convention and different responsibilities. But at state convention for a section president, we may be asking the section presidents to stay with their chapters rather than stay with our team. Again, for us to manage costs, but still allow them to have all those experiences with us as a team. Our goal with that, again, was not to take away opportunities from section presidents. If anything, we have 5 more section officer teams. We're going to do more training for section presidents, and the regional presidents would have a specific role, but it wasn't about taking away opportunities. It was about managing cost. And so that's why we changed that's why we incorporated the concept of having regional presidents and moving that direction. And again, that was just in the thought process of, would 30 sections serve us better? Would it make our sections smaller?
There's been a few other questions. Sherry, you still have?
Mine had to do with the X factor thing. I can go back to it if you want to. Okay,
Try
this was an initial thought, Sherry, or your Mount Vernon, that I had on the X factor comment, that if we're going to allow people to go from section to section and still get X value, then that defeats half the purpose of having sections to begin with. And that also potentially get really messy for CDEs, where you have to be a section qualifier to move forward. Mess to try to be like, okay, well, you have to do your section for this one, but not for that one. Go ahead.
Point. Okay, other questions? Where do we?
Dave first?
Yep.
Not even call it Staunton. Sorry, second time. Mindy, question. So am I right whenever, like with the 30 options, the regional presidents, at one point in time, I heard those were the only ones that could be section or state president?
No, yes, just like a section president is the only one that can be state president right now.
Okay. So my next question, if we do the 30 and only have those 5 regional president or 10 regional presidents, whatever it is, doesn't that add the political factor back in, which is why we went to the top 10 selection committee to begin with?
We would still do selection.
I realize that, but it seems like it adds yet one more like political power move in it when that kind of took that away with that selection committee.
I don't know the selection.
Oh, I don't know. You kind of did from whenever I was in school. I don't know, just something.
It could, you could, yeah, it could be interpreted that way, I guess, if you will. But I don't think that, I guess what I would say is that we would be offering training section presidents as regional presidents. Right now, it's called a district director. They're the ones that automatically serve on the board. They're not the ones that automatically represent us at national convention delegates. So we have other things that add to that political layer right now, district directors and those that get to be delegates and those that are not. So this would eliminate like who does it, it's automatic. The regional and then the nice thing is with this too, with the regional president concept. Again, I don't care if you guys like that or not. Like it's your decision. But we were trying to come up with solutions. But if your regional president is on your FFA board and is your delegate, you guys decided that. You decided that in your regional election, and your regional president has to be one of the 3 current section presidents for that. So you get to decide that at the local level. Well, right now, the fellow section presidents decide who their district director is, and delegates are the officer team with the FFA center staff decide who the delegates are. So yeah, it definitely adds that, but I think there's other things that are in place right now that kind of add to that too.
And I think the political piece of our elections is always going to be there when we put it in the hands of our students. But I have great confidence in our students and I wholeheartedly believe it's where it belongs.
Riley, you've got your hand raised and that question in the chat. Is it on the same or you want the voice that you had in the chat?
It's the same one that's in the chat.
And the main answer I would give, the question was, how are we prepared to work with school administrators if they have concerns? IVAT board and the SPA Center staff have already been working through that. Last year, there were administrators that shared concerns with the resectioning process. Administrators will have an opportunity to share their concerns and feedback just the same as you do throughout this process. And we encourage that and welcome that. So any administrators that have those, we'll talk to them. They'll be considered and we'll have those conversations.
John, I have another question.
Yep.
And I'm assuming yes, and I'm assuming that we're looking at this, but if we ever get to the point where we're state affiliated, are we looking at this map in regards to the best way to safeguard it? So that way, when we take a look at numbers, we don't see that, how do I say it? That dramatic shift.
Yeah, somewhat. We're taking both FFA membership and I get enrollment into consideration. Part of it though is, as we've talked with the committee, if and when we move to a statewide affiliate model, to a certain extent, you have to let the affiliate model do the work that it's intended to do. In that affiliation as a whole, the goal is that it gets more of your students involved, but that takes time. So it's not going to be flip a switch overnight. All of a sudden, you're bringing more students to events. We have to let affiliation model do its work, and that may be something to then reconsider in 5 years as the affiliation model takes effect and we see increased participation, enrollment, membership. That will be taken into consideration.
Yeah, Jacob Meisner, Princeville. This one's kind of a collaborative point from our section because we talked about this just recently. It was brought up earlier that these two proposed maps are working to try and meet policy. And if we understood the policy correct, it said that every 5 years we have to revisit this. And our section is concerned that we spent all of last year's time and energy focusing on this. And it was an hour-long discussion at IVAT conference. And we said no as an organization at IVAT in the summer to both proposals. And here we are still spinning our wheels on resectioning. When does that every 5-year time frame come to an end? Is it until we get the answer we want, or is it until we get the answer the membership gives us?
It's been a discussion by the IVAT board that they wanted to take this year and gather feedback if this was still something that wanted to be considered. So if a map went into effect, so if anything was approved in summer of 2022, as we've discussed, 2022, 2023 would be an implementation year. 2023, 2024 would be the first time that you would actually be in a new section. And so then it would be IVAT's discussion whether we restart the 5-year timer then, or we say we're not going to consider it again until 2030.
I get that, but I think what our section is concerned is we spent 2021 talking about resectioning, and here we are in 21-22 still talking about resectioning. How long are we going to spend in this process? Is it 2 years, 3 years, 4 years till we get the answer we want? Or is if this doesn't work, we're done till the next 5 years?
Yes, the IVAT board's committed. We're trying it this year. This is the end of the conversations. But the reason they want to still keep talking about this is we never got to have this dialogue in person at a conference, in a meeting. Trying to manage resectioning during COVID was not the way to do this. It was a little bit of a train wreck, and I think we can all admit that from a lot of different sides. So we wanted to give it a fair shake, have the opportunity to have these open discussions. If it happens, it happens this year. If it doesn't, it doesn't, and we're not bumping it down the road. IVAT board, and again, board members speak up, but consensus in the meetings has been a decision is made this year one way or another.
Okay, that's really what our section was trying to figure out.
Yes.
Thank you.
When will that decision be made, Jim Conference?
So timeline moving forward, committee and IVAT board are collecting feedback. The goal is then to have revised versions available for the joint boards and section chairs to look at in January. And then that will be kind of our our finals round of reviewing the maps. There'll be any final changes discussed, proposed. So then decisions can be made mid-spring, March, April timeframe to be rolled out at conference.
I guess another question, is this gonna be recorded so that teachers that weren't here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And we're going to share the clean version of our recording. That means something a little more to those of you on virtual. Thank you for sticking with us through that experience. Yeah. Thank goodness it happened on a teacher call and not with our students. That's all I can say.
Are there any other questions, comments, or concerns that anybody feels special projects should know about at this point?
Marissa, you need to understand that ISU just handed us out canned koozies. I'm not sure if that's a signal or a message. Well, I'll send yours to you in the mail.
Perfect. I knew I should have known that Colton take them.
Yeah.
Sorry they weren't full.
All good, all good. What other questions can we answer for you or address any other thoughts, questions, or concerns? Yes.
Probably why I'm in section 11, just curious, our section doesn't change a whole bunch either way.
Uh-huh.
So like when I'm looking at which one, what does adding 5 sections add? What problem does that solve if the mileage is the same across the board?
Right. Yeah, we're not saying it does. I don't think that it does. Again,
There are some financial, and I think that was linked, right?
yes,
Big,
in the
huge
one that
document and
says
listserv.
comparisons, there's an Excel sheet and it has like a chart on the first tab that has the current plan versus 30. And on the second tab, or maybe one of the tabs, it says the financials. And it does show that if we went the route of regional, we could save some funds there. But you're right, the 30 doesn't solve the mileage problem that we thought it would when we first talked about it.
And
Yeah.
I think to answer some of TJ's question, talking about foundation, like the presentation that Foundation gave this morning.
Yeah.
Foundation doesn't just get used for FFA stuff.
Right.
And again, you know, like when I was on FFA board like 8 years ago, even when I started IABAT board, we used to get reimbursed for teacher travel. So like if we went to an IABAT board meeting or an FFA board meeting, we got reimbursed for that. We haven't got reimbursed for 5 years. They used to cover for ag teachers who serve on the board to go to NAA conference. We used to have a $10,000 line item on there. And the board has had to take that off because foundation dollars have went down. So there is more stuff that gets paid for than just section president stuff with foundations. Right. And again, you know, like there are losses all around for all organizations that utilize foundations.
What other questions, comments, like to share? It is 4 o'clock. Right? 3:58. I got 2 minutes left on our time frame here. Mr. Edgar and I and Jayden will go back across the street and watch and help our facilitators finalize everything with your students. But we are happy to answer your questions if you want to visit with us one-on-one or send us an email or a text or a call. We're always open for that. We're very welcoming to your thoughts and your concerns. We can't solve everybody's problem, but we definitely want to hear what's on your mind and what your needs are. So yeah, let us know. ISU took care of part of your needs, I'm thinking. So you get the koozie at least.
Till tomorrow.
All right. Yep. So with that, yeah, we wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. I hope you have a nice couple days to just be yourself, be with your families, or you don't want to be your family, just be yourself, you know, whatever floats your boat. But yeah, we wish you all the best with that, and then we'll get back at it, have another contest here in December, and then we'll have going forward in early January. That's January 7th, when the 2 boards will be together, and then we'll have section chairs the next day, and more information will come out about Ground Zero shortly, and everything else that we kind of talked about. But thank you very much for your time.
Mindy, for those in attendance, what's the process for picking up the kids? Has that already been covered?
As of right now, the session has been running about 5 minutes late, so still really close to on time. If anybody else would like a learn book, those are up here on the table as well. So if you want to see what your students have saw, we've got a few extras. I know a few of you picked them up during registration, but we ran out. One of the things I do want to mention is page 18 of this is probably what you want to debrief with your students. That is their community service plan or their school action plan that they've been building during the conference. That then the goal is they come back and implement in your local community. So if anything, we ask you to kind of review page 18, I think it is, of this with your students. The conference should be done at 5 p.m. So again, you're more than welcome to drive over there and pick them up. But realize not everyone is going to get in and out of that circle drive. So you're probably going to
say,
need to.
you might consider just pulling along the road there and putting your flashers on, because that circle drive was a little bit of a nightmare.
Yeah, text your kids where you're parked, basically.
The street on the north. You can go in the parking lot in the back.
You gotta pay. You can't go in the back parking lot or they'll charge you. So, but you can park along that street or little street on the side. But if you try to come in the circle drive, that slows everybody else, so that can slow you down. So to hurry, I'd say just stay on the street. Anything else? All right, bye, friends.
Get them out on time.
Work on it. Oh, hey. One more thing. Can I have one more thing? One more thing. Paxton, hold up that brown paper bag there in front of you. A lot of you are drinking out of bottles with these plastic caps. I have a lady from my church who's collecting these caps, and I've made it my personal mission to help her get her last 65 pounds of caps. So if you could pass your caps to the front or give me that brown paper bag, but I would like to collect your caps if you're willing to give those to me. That would be great. You're helping Darla.
Go Darla.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
How do you get 1,000 pounds? And you don't have a purse?
I don't know what Jeff's plans are with him now. I'll ask him. Hey.
That's what Darla's doing. That's an honor for her husband.
We took him 2,000.
Oh my gosh.
2,000 pounds.
Okay, I would say your question. Yeah, so I have a girl who we're trying, kind of struggling with her 5 events above chapter level, okay? Do like sector invitational live sector. Okay, they count as one. So can she do like state section and an invitational? So just one live sector. Yeah, I know that's tough for some people. Well, our point is we want to, yeah, we want their. That was like, I mean, if they did all 5 as livestock contests, how active are they? No, I agree. And she just, those were the 5 things I was there. Oh, yeah. The last few contests, she's been sick and stuff like that. Nope, no, I appreciate the question. One has been tough cancer many times. No, I get that completely, yeah, but I get it a lot. It's hard. I do know that. Yeah. But she can count as like LTS or something like that. That'll count as.
Conventions, yeah.
Yeah.
Section,
This, and this. Yeah. God bless Darla.